Hi, welcome back to my class, Cross-Cultural Understanding. With me, Andreas Yulianto from Jakarta International University, Indonesia. Today is the second chapter of this class with the title Language and Culture, Culture and Foreign Language Teaching. Well, let's begin our second chapter. Let me introduce you with the learning objectives of this class. Well, at the end of this course, I expect everybody who listens this lecture to be able to, the first, define culture. Second one, provide examples of culture. And the third one, provide examples of how culture influence the language. And the fourth one, it is expected that you are able to describe the importance of understanding culture in teaching a foreign language. And then the fifth one, as the last, provide examples of cultural studies in teaching a foreign language, especially in teaching English. These are the learning objectives of today's sessions. Let's begin. We have discussed culture at the previous meeting, at the first meeting. And indeed, the previous meeting didn't aim to provide definite interpretations of culture, but rather draws attention to the various elements that deserve our attentions. Yeah? Drawing on literature from various disciplines, we explore the following, we explore the facets of concept of culture. And we have also explored many theories that have brought our attentions to the fact that culture is displayed through our everyday behavior in a certain context, of course. Let's take a look at these three pictures. All of them contain meanings that represent our activities and our daily habit, of course. The first is, look at greetings. We used to hear about this and even do it every day. We shake or something else like in these pictures. Yeah, there are two guys. The first is giving his hand, and then the other one is doing something else. Then the second picture is about, look at the friendship. The two men are holding their hands each other, one another. It shows the friendship or so on and so forth. And then the third one, it is also one of our behavior. We kiss our elders' hand, like this kid. She shows the respect and politeness, to other people, probably her mother or her parents, her father, and they are all present around us and become part of our lives. That's the behaviors, and probably you can have your own way as your culture in this one. Next. Previously, I have also described various forms of culture that exist in society, such as beliefs, traditions, worldviews, and several other things. In fact, people usually associate culture with traditional dance, ceremonies, and kind of arts. From this, we can also see that there are other types of the representations of the culture. Look at these pictures. According to Guritno, 2003, as I did in reality, culture indicates all aspects that members of a group share together. Children learn ways of doing things, ways of talking, smiling, laughing, liking, and disliking things. Culture determines people's action, their social relationship, and their morality. Actually, in our daily life, what we ever do is a representations of culture. How we sit, how we dress, how we walk, or how we interact and build relationships. Yeah, it is also a features of our culture. Yeah, as simple as in this picture, the girl laughs, how she laughs. It is also the representations of what we habitually do. We then believe that this is our way of life. It may all become a shared culture that is we can share from generations to generations. Yeah, like we learn from our parents or grandparents, yeah, probably, or even it can be taught in our formal environment, such as in our school. It is very possible uh, to share this culture. Next, yeah. Now let's learn from this case study. Let me read. Andri, yeah, a student from Indonesia, is currently pursuing a master's degree in India. Yeah. One time, he wanted to try street food in Hyderabad city. After ordering, he was confused to find a seat. Finally, he chose to sit on a small bridge nearby. A few minutes later, the food he ordered came, and this made him even more confused. He politely asked the seller, "Where's the spoon?" Let's try to figure out the problem in this Excel. What can you guess from this problem? What happens with Andri when he was trying to eat, he was trying to taste the food in that city? Can you imagine? Probably Andri comes from uh, yeah, the country that usually when they are eating something, they have to have a proper seat. They have to get a good service. But here, once he tries or he is facing a new culture, he's got something different from what Andri experienced. Like when he was after he was ordering the food, he was confused to find a seat because nothing, I think, no chairs or no proper seats in that environment. Yeah, or even like the next step, when he got the food, the meal that he ordered, he politely asked, "Where is the spoon?" Oh, I think we can have found other things here, other case, like probably Andri couldn't eat without spoon, but maybe in that city, it's their culture to eat without spoon. So that's why they serve food without the spoon or even fork. But it is different. It's quite different from Andri's experience. Probably Andri regularly use a spoon when he is eating. And this cultural differences, of course, make something difficult sometimes to what is that, to adjust in with our habit. And yeah, after this class, we'll try to have a clear perspective about these differences. Next. Yeah, from the previous case, we can see how culture and the way a person or group does something can vary from one person to another. And this proves that habits are never the same as others. So, what should we do? During this course, yeah, we will learn to see the differences, and then we will learn together to grow understanding and acceptance of each differences. But before that, we will look at different cultures and try to uh, draw an understanding of the essence of culture. Now look at the definitions of culture from Riyadi. The way we speak, for example, to our friends, our parents, teacher, or even strangers, the way we treat them, the way we uh, use language, our body language, or etc. The way we cook, the way we eat, drink, and dress, those refer to the culture. Yeah. Now, look at these pictures. It is related to the previous case from Andrea. Like the first pictures, look at this man. He is eating using the knife and fork, probably, or spoon and fork. Yeah, it's common in some countries, in some cultures, but in other cultures, probably no. Yeah, look at that the second pictures in the middle. The kids, yeah, here, she is eating directly using her hand, and of course she enjoyed it a lot because it is her habit, and also it is her culture. And of course, in some countries, some cultures, it is their probably traditional habit, or yeah, of course, their teachers or their parents teach them how to eat properly using their hands. What about the third pictures? We can see from, oh, they are using chopsticks. It is of course different, the one and another. The first they use a fork and spoon. The second one without any tools, like using her hands, and the third one using the chopsticks. And look at the differences. They are real, as simple as the tools used to eat. Yeah. In some countries, of course, probably they have their own or other or different from these three pictures. They have their own way how to enjoy their meal. Yeah. That's the cultures, and that's also the differences. Now let us learn from this excerpt. Yeah, it is taken from the Hoffman 1989, as cited in Rianti. Yeah, let me read first. My mother says I am becoming English. This hurts me because I know she means I am becoming cold. I'm no colder than I've been, but I'm learning to be less demonstrative. I learned this from a teacher who, after uh, contemplating the gesticulations with which I help myself describe the digestive system of a frog. Tell me to sit. Sit on my hands and then try talking. I learn my new reserve from people who take a step back when talk. Because I'm standing too close, crowding down, cultural distances are different. I later learned in sociology class, but I know it already. I learned restraint from Penny, who looks offended when I shake her by the arm in excitement, as if my gesture had been one of aggressions instead of friendliness. I learned it from a girl who pulls away when I hook my arm through hers as we walk down the street. This movement of friendly intimacy as an embarrassment to her. Perhaps my mother is right. After all, perhaps I'm becoming colder. After a while, emotions follows action. Response grows warmer or cooler according to gesture. I'm more careful about what I say, how I loud, I laugh, whether I give vent to grief. Yeah, what happens with this accent? Can you try to identify what is the actually the problem here? The writer is an American who comes from a Polish family. She and her family emigrated to America when she was a teenager. Yeah, this is the story behind this. She found that everything she did is considered strange and even created some misunderstanding. She probably comes from a culture that is very demonstrative in, let's say, expressing emotion or feeling. Yeah? Whereas the English people are very reserved, or reserved people who do not show what's that, their emotions or feeling demonstratively. What can we learn from this example? Yes, that's true. Culture involves almost everything in our life. As you can see from this example, the girl finds that what is normal or appropriate for her is not always appropriate or normal for other people. Wow. In her culture, look at this in this. It is common to stand close to stand what is that? Close to the speaker, yeah, when you have a conversations with the other people. But here, this is not normal for English people. They stand, they tend to stand not too close when they talk to each other. Yeah, when they talk with other people, and they will not shake your arms in excitement, for example, or they will not laugh loudly when they hear something funny or when they are happy. Wow, that's a real uh, difference here. And of course, the writer here initially become confused about this difference. And regularly, because this girl was socialized with the new culture, when she gets back to the original uh, environment in her house, for example, of course, everybody around her uh, was confused. What happened with you, right? I think some of you also experienced this, yeah, especially when you are going abroad for trip or even for study for some periods of time. Next, that's true. Culture in our place or country are not normal or even appropriate for other people. Yeah, during the socializations process, yeah, our elders, such as parents, religious leaders, teachers, and mass media, such as televisions, radio, internet, newspaper, or everything, convey a message about what is expected and considered good, such as the form of breathing, communication style, non-verbal behavior in various situations and in different contexts. Yeah. Family, religion, social or academic, professional, yeah, they have very different cultures. Yeah. And like, for example, in my country, Indonesia, it would be considered impolite or rude, yeah, to call older people by their first name. Do not like I'm not uh, calling them using the let's say the terms such as brother or sister or uncle or father. Yeah. However, what we see as a good and right, fair or unfair, polite or impolite, it will be, of course, bring to the values and also the norms that exist. Yeah. And of course, that they are firmly holding by in their society. And therefore, we cannot force the truth according to us only, yeah, to be forced on others, because culture is not normal and appropriate for other people. That is the case, and the answers of cultural differences like this. Now we move to the concept of cultural values and cultural norms, because everything is basically related to this. So that's why we have to have a clear concept, understanding about the cultural values and cultural norms. And of course, this topic we have discussed it in the previous lecture. Yeah. Now let's begin with this short conversations between Joko. Joko is Indonesian and Albert is American. Let's say. I heard your wife is sick, Joko said. How are things now? Has she been hospitalized? And Albert responded, none of your business. Oh, wow. What happened in these situations? Can you try to predict any elements or aspect of culture that you can identify from Joko or even Albert? What happened in this intercultural conversation? Have you ever even experienced this? Yeah, we are shown situations in which one of the cultures here upholds a sense of solidarity and kinship. Probably this guy feels what is that? When someone is sick, he or she feels that is her duty to comfort her family by giving attention. Yeah, can you try to predict who is this guy? Probably Joko. And it is good for Joko's case because it is his habit. However, this is the cause of the problem. In other cultures, like what Albert experienced or socialized, privacy is important and sensitive, of course. This would be considered rude. Why? Of course, for Albert, your life is your business. My life is mine. When we violate it, maybe this hurts and violates their privacy. And even this can be dangerous, can be very serious problem in an intercultural interaction. Yeah, even the small things like this. That's why what we expect is sometimes it's not what other people expect. So be careful with that. And here we learn about values. We have learned about values in a previous meeting, where we learned and understand uh, the values or new values during the primary socialization period. We carry our the understanding and the principles about of justice, truth, goodness, which we have been which we have believed and applied during our life. And these beliefs play a role in determining the standards of behavior accepted in our society. From this, we can then learn to think that a person should or should not behave in a certain way. Yeah, during this, let's say, uh, primary socialization process, we form a views about the nature and the importance of human qualities such as honesty, uh, integrity, and even the openness. And we can judge others or ourselves because we have values. We have these standards. You are wrong because you violate this. This is the rule. This is the standard for everyone to do. Yeah. Previously, we discussed about the values based on this Lustig and Coaster 2010, Ting, Tony, and Chang 2012, as I did in Jane Jackson's 2014. Share ideas about what is right, wrong, fair, unfair, important, unjust, kind, or cruel, or unimportant. Yeah, and here, Guritno 2003, as cited in Rianti, values is concerned with what is good and desirable and what is bad and undesirable. Yeah, that's the values. Let's move. Look at these two pictures. What's the difference? Did you notice something here? Of course, one of the pictures with the door closed and the other is open. What does it mean? This, of course, relates to the earlier cross-cultural conversations. We are talking about the values that two different people believe in. We in Indonesia really value our family and community. We tend to live and do things together with our families and our neighbors. And we live with or close to family, our parents, our grandparents, uncles, and aunts. And we know our neighbors as well as their families. This is the habit in my country. We often visit each other. If something happens, something bad happens, yeah, to our neighbors especially, then we and other neighbors will come to help people in Indonesia, especially those who living in urban areas. Usually they leave their doors open to show that they welcome people to come and visit them. But then, of course, maybe it represents one of these pictures. Probably the right one, the doors is open, right? But the other is closed. What does this mean? Of course, this is the opposite of the cultures in my country, Indonesia. Like maybe in other countries, the countries or the people who value personal privacy, they prefer to live and do things on their own. And they usually keep their doors closed. Wow. So one is very open and the other is very closed because it is based on the how they value their privacy in their life. Well, talking about values, of course, we also and we should discuss about the norms. Yeah, we have what is that? We relate the values, yeah, uh, about what the people do in their life, yeah. And we have the standard, and if somebody, yeah, or violates these standards, of course they break the norms. They break the norms in the society. This relates to whether our behavior is acceptable and doesn't violate the standards that exist in our environment or not, or even our family. Probably we have our own norms. Yeah, whether what we do is polite or impolite, it is about the behavior, or whether we what we say is good and doesn't hurt others, or probably yes, we hurt them. And of course, it's all regulated but not written. Yeah, some norms are not written, but this is the social punishments. Yeah, and but we can what is that? Can be this all can be shared and together can maintain these norms. Yeah, because they believe that this norm is the best for their life. Now let us learn from this case study. In Indonesia, Jackson met friends who were predominantly Muslim and wore the hijab or veil for the woman. Yeah, hijab is the for covering the hairs. Yeah. And one time he made new friends and tried to interact with them. It's his habit when meeting new friends, he shakes hands and hugs them. Jackson, however, was surprised at that time when tried to get acquainted and shook hands with a woman from Indonesia. Then she refused his outstretched hand and kept her distance from him very much. Wow. So sorry, he's a poor Jackson, yeah. But what happens actually here? Can you try to predict what happens with this? Yeah, probably for um, people like the girls that interact with Jackson, it is of course impolite for men to when it is the first time to meet her, hug her, or even touch her hands. What is the reasons behind this? Maybe the answer is the next. Oh, we still have to learn from this second case study. I think this is related with the previous one. Elisa is a person who really likes traveling. She is a student who had an opportunity to go abroad. And Elisa met his old friend, Frank, yeah, who is in a country far from hers. In short, Frank asked her to sleep at his house because it was too late. He was worried that Elisa would lose her way. Elisa looked so panicked and uncomfortable with the offer. In the end, she still wanted to go back to the hotel where she was staying. What happens actually? This case and the second case. I think Elisa and the girl in the previous case, they come from different or the same cultures probably. The reasons is here. the reasons behind of all this case, this scenario. According to reality, the cultural norms standard is a standard rules and accepted by the members of the community, mix between culture and religion. Oh, I think this is the sensitive issue. I think this is the case why the previous two cases, the previous two stories about this all. In some countries, norms are usually a mix of culture and religion. For example, like in Indonesia, it is against the the norm for the unmarried people, women or even and men, yeah, to hold hands. This is against the rules for Muslim, yeah, because they are not legal to touch. It's even more impossible in the second case, for the second case, yeah. In the countries that are strong religious, will consider what is being done is against the norm for unmarried men and women to live together. However, this phenomenon may be common in other countries because this is not against their norms, and they certainly don't mind if this happens. Maybe this is the answer to the previous case experienced by the Jacksons in the first case and Elisa in the second case. For Jacksons who are probably very like free, even you are the first time to meet with a girl, you can just shake their hands or even you can hug, yeah, because yeah, it is applicable, it is appropriate for yeah particular culture, but for other case, for the other cultures, of course, sometimes no, and this violate the norms. Therefore, here in the second case, Elisa felt uncomfortable with Frank's offer. Probably Frank didn't notice it. And Jacksons, for example, come from a country that doesn't prohibit people from hugging. For some cultures, probably hugging is a symbol of the respect, acceptance when comes to the culture. Yeah, when newcomer comes to my house, for example, or you might to come to my environments, and but for other people, I think it is odd, strange, and it is not, or it is unacceptable. So everyone, everybody, every family, not only family, but even you yourself, you have your norms, the standard of the things that is good or bad for you. Yeah, and we are very familiar in our family, of course. Um, we also have the standards to regulate our life. Well, talking about the norms, yeah. Here, Guritno 2003, as I did in reality, explains that norms consist of folkways and mores. Here, folkways are the way of the people, the custom of the community, which, when broken, do not have fatal consequences. While mores are concerned with behaviors of vital importance in the community and represent the basic moral values of a community. Social norms or rules enforced by members of community can exist as both formal and informal rules of behavior. Informal rules can be divided like this one, folkways and mores. So ways and mores are considered as the informal norms. Yeah, for ways that what is that rules, the rules and the norms that while not offensive to violate, yeah, and even it doesn't have fatal consequences, but it's still a punishment, yeah, from the society or from the family, or we feel something like sinful when we violate the norms. Yeah. While the mores are also rules that are not written down, but when it is violated, results in severe penalties and social sanctions against individuals, such as social and religious exclusions. So when you are violating the rules, so be careful with the mores because you can get the consequence like fatal consequence compared with the workplace. Yeah. Next. Oh, we right now learn from the cultural norms and values as described by Wilsbeek Bichke, 1994, as I did in reality. Yeah. What can we see here? Balinese road, American road. Let's try to compare. Balinese is the one of the islands in Indonesia. Yeah. Can you find the difference between this culture, the different cultures? In Balinese world, if I feel something bad, it is good not to think about it. If I don't think about it, I will not feel like this. I can then feel something good. If I feel something bad for American, it is good to think about it. If I think about it, I will not feel like this. I can then feel something good. Wow. The most striking differences between the two has to do with different attitude toward self-analysis. In Balinese culture, the left one, people are constantly enjoy to forget their troubles, to not think and to become cheerful and smiling as a result of this strategy. And the opposite of this road in American, one is enjoyed to achieve a similar result by taking the opposite route. If I feel something bad, both of them, Balinese and road, for Balinese, it is good not to think about it. But for American, it is good to think about it. Wow. If I don't think about it for Balinese, I will not feel like this pain resembles or this suffer. But for American, if I think about it, I will not feel like this. So probably, yeah, in American, it is good to solve this problem as soon as possible. But for this other countries, other cultures, probably we don't need to think about it too much. Just let it go, or forget it, yeah, something like that. What about you in your life? You are close to the Balinese route or American routes? Identify by yourself. Well, I have the pictures here. Still about the cultural value and norms. How are you? American and also the Australian when talking about uh, greetings, regular greetings. Let us return to our discussions of the cultural values and norms. through this following case in Australia and America by Wiersbe, 1994, as cited in the Rianti books. Yeah. American, if we look at the first scenario from the American, we can see that what is that? American needs to be like white, and Australians doesn't care about that. Why? That is the case. That is the questions for these situations. And once we observe this response toward the greetings, we can try to predict what happens actually. Australians care less than Americans about what other people think of them. They are not really interested in whether someone likes it or not. Therefore, they do not try as hard as American to influence the opinion of others about them. And this can be seen from how Australian responds to the common greetings here. How are you? Not bad. Not too bad. Cannot complain. That's it. While American wants to get a positive feedback from others. So they consider it is necessary to create a positive feelings in society. How are you? I'm fine. Very well. Thank you. So on and so forth. Quite different, right? Yeah. What about in your country? This is the activity for you, everybody. Look around and investigate whether the ways you do things are different from your friends, from other family, religions, or country. And then the second one, try to provide examples of cultural values and cultural norms that exist in your region. You can write it down on your paper and then try to discuss with your friends. That's no problem. Yeah. Now talking about language and culture, because what we have discussed so far, it is suitable, it is appropriate to talk about what is actually the relations between language and culture. Do they influence it one another or not? After these sessions, we can figure out the answers for this. Yeah. There are two cases here, two conversations. The first is the case of Indonesians, and then the second one is American. Now that you know the definitions of culture, because we just discussed about this, at least you have what is that? You can formulate your own definitions about the culture. Many experts share their beliefs and present real examples of the link between language and culture. The link between language and culture, the relations between language and culture. Now let's start with the two cases here. Rita and Ratna. Wow, your shoes are so pretty. Ah, these are ugly and cheap. While like her face blushed. And the second case, wow, your shoes is very beautiful. And Kylie said, thank you, while smiling. Yeah. Can you figure out, can you see the difference here? Yeah, the conversation between two Indonesians women. Rati's reactions to Rita's compliment was to reject. Wow, your shoes are so pretty. These are ugly and cheap. Actually, inside of her or Rati's feeling, of course, she is happy with this compliment. Yeah. In Indonesian culture, yeah, humble people are calm. Rati will be considered arrogant if she agrees with the Rita's compliment. So by denying it, she was trying to be humble. Contrary, in American culture, it is common to give and receive compliments. You will not come across, you will not be considered as arrogant when you receive a compliment. Can you give another example? Write it down and discuss it with your friends. Or probably you can give your examples in your family. Pay attention in your family environment or family. How to respond to a compliment. Do you find any differences? Or maybe you feel the same as Indonesian, or maybe your culture is the same as American. Try to do these observations in your house or your environment. Yeah. Next, we talk about another definitions of the relations, the link between language and culture. We learn from the Whorfian's hypothesis, as cited in WARDAF 2014. Different speakers will therefore experience the world differently insofar as the language they speak differ structurally. Yeah. One claim is that if speakers of one language have certain words to describe things, and speakers of another language lack similar words, then the speakers of the first language will find it easier to talk about those things, right? Absolutely, yes. If we apply Worf's idea about language and culture, we can see that the way people see things is indeed reflected there in their language. Look at these examples. For example, in Indonesia, we have many words to represent rice. In our culture, rice is very important. We eat it regularly every day. That is why we have many words to represent each form of it. Look at, we have the word padi. Padi is the form of the, or the term for the rice in the field. And we also have gabah. Gabah, it is the form after being harvested. So after taken from the field, we call it as a gabah. And we also have beras. Beras is the form before being cooked. And then finally, nasi for the form after being cooked. And of course, there are still many more of the name of the rice that I cannot mention one by one. But in America or even in other country, where rice is not considered as important as in Indonesia, there is only one word for this, that is rice. What about rice in your country? Do you have many terms for the rice, for the specific categories like the field, rice in the field, rice after harvested, and rice before being cooked, or even after cooked? You can write it down. Well, the relations between language and culture is also reflected in a kinship system by WARDAF 2006. What happened? Well, they WARDAF discuss members of what is that? Examples of the relations between language and culture of a case in a kinship. What do you call, for example, like when you call your older brother by what name? How do you call your mothers or your father, whether you use the first name or by other kinship? Yeah. Based on the research conducted by Sianipar and Ilianto, 2021, yeah, I did this research. American have brother for both older and younger one. So Americans, they do not differentiate for the member of family who are older than young and younger one. They have only the word, for example, brother for both. While in Korea, people have, sorry if I'm mistakenly pronouncing this, Kunggomo for paternal older aunt and Kunimu for maternal older aunt. Here in Korea, they differentiate not only for the older and the younger, but for the which side of family what is that? This one come from, whether from paternal side, paternal or parent, father side, or maternal from mother side. They differentiate this one. And the other observations from Yulia 2016, Japanese, it is one of the cultures in Indonesia, has the term mas for older brother and di, adik for the younger one. Culture creates all these differentiations. What about in your country? Can you figure it? Can you give us examples? Try to read, try to find it and write it down. And of course, basically, the regulations or the use of term kinships like this, yeah, depends on the principles and the beliefs held by a particular culture. Some may distinguish addressing term for older and younger family members, but others may not. This case is certainly interesting to discuss and serve as the examples of the relations between culture and language. The other relations between culture and language is that from color terminology as written in Wardef 1998 as cited in reality. The term people use to describe color give us another means of exploring the relations between different languages and cultures. We also find that sometimes color cannot directly, or some words can directly be translated, yeah, like this one. Sometimes we cannot directly translate the color words from one language to another without introducing the subtle changes in meaning. For example, in English, brown, something like that. An interesting issue is how color are referred to in different languages. Are color terms arbitrary, or is there a general pattern? If there is, what are its characteristics and why might it exist? All languages make use of basic color terms, yeah, such as basic colors such as blue, yellow, but not some combinations of words like light blue or pale yellow or dark blue, something like that. It's not easy to translate directly a certain color terminology. The English and American people need this terminology for their special colors like blonde, yeah, in these pictures, to any color terminology. What's it? That doesn't, but in some country or some cultures, the word like blonde, they don't have, because they don't have any experience, or they don't use this as their color in their. This is the special hair color that exists in America and or other countries in Western probably. And for example, in Indonesians, they don't have this hair color. Yeah. And of course, this is also the relations of the culture and the language, as it is represented by the some words that cannot be translated in particular culture. You have this especially special word, but this word cannot be understood in other culture. Right. We have taboo and euphemism as Wardah 2006. In his book, Wardah mentions about taboo and euphemism, which are also good examples of the relations between language and culture. What is meant by taboo and euphemism? Taboo is the prohibitions or avoidance in any society of behavior believed to be harmful to its member, in that it would cause an anxiety, embarrassment, or shame. Yeah. When we say this taboo or we utter this in our life, then of course we will feel anxiety, embarrassment, or shame when we use this. And euphemism is to avoid mentioning certain matters directly. Some words or objects are considered to be taboo in one society, but in other society, no. Yeah, the same goes to euphemism. Taboo and euphemism are usually referred or related to the standard and norms in society. For example, the word, what is that? Like in English word we have damn, sorry, damn. It was considered as taboo. Yeah. And the things that we have to remember is that taboo and euphemism can change from time to time. Yeah. And what we consider taboo at the past, today or tomorrow, probably it will not. Yeah. So it is dynamic. Can you give examples of taboo subject in your place? You may discuss with your partners. Well, how do you respond this? If you'd like to have a cup of tea, wouldn't you like some more tea? How do you answer this? Well, in Japan and Korea, if the answer for this offer is no, then it means the offer is accepted. In France, the answer for that kind of offer is merci, which means thanks. But in this context, merci means no thanks. It's different from American. Well, when you are saying thanks for this offer, it would be mean as yes, please. It is written by Cyrano 2000, as I did in the reality. Yeah. Well, now look at this other examples, these conversations. It is written in Bahasa Indonesia, in Indonesian, and also in English. In English would be, Mila, can you take me to the airport later? And the answer is, wow, at 12, I'll have a class. And the other case, Sandy, can you write this letter for me? And the answer, Susan's writing is better, sir. Wow. It is also another example of the relation between the language and culture. Language is an integral part of the culture of a group. Therefore, cultural elements such as rules, habits, and group way of life can be expressed through language. Nations in this world have a culture that is reflected in their language, giving rise to the various kinds of language styles that characterize the markers of their society. So Syed No wrote that there are many ways to express no, to reject or to decline an offer or a request. Yeah, in American culture, people tend to be direct. What is that? Tend to be direct when they are rejecting a request of an offer. They will use an explicit word to express their rejections, like "No, sorry, I cannot." This one. Unlike the American, who are straightforward in expressing their rejections, the Japanese or Indonesians tend to avoid expressing their rejections openly. It is related to the culture in which it is considered impolite to say no. What is your comment on these examples? Yes, the Japanese or the first or the last part is trying very hard to avoid saying no when they're trying to reject a request of an offer. Probably their culture prevents them to express it directly. That is why uh, they find the way to reject something smoothly, let's say. What about in your culture? Can you say no directly to a person who offers something or who asks you to do something? You may discuss it with your friends and write it down, so you know that you understand Sweden's idea about the relations of between culture and language. There is also a very close link between the life of society and the lexicon of the language spoken by it, by Wiersbeek 1997, recited in Riyadh. Many words in one language that are difficult to be translated into other language due to its strong cultural value. Different culture encourage different attitude towards emotions, and these different attitudes are reflected in that in the lexicon uh, and the grammar. Well, now let's us see what Anna, what Wiersbeek says about the relationship between language and culture. She conduct a comprehensive study on the influence of culture toward a language, especially to its vocabulary. She believes that there is a very close link between the life of society and the lexicon of the language spoken by. The example is the Japanese word like isin. Isin is not really the same as embrace, shame, or shy. These three words cannot cover or cannot represent this feeling. If you put this word in the context of Japanese culture, this three like ashamed, embrace, or shy, of course, they are not the same as the word isin. Yeah, those we will not find an exact translations for this word. In Japanese culture, isin is not something bad. You don't have to do something wrong or bad to feel sin. That's why, it is very difficult to find the words in English, let's say. And the other examples is the word surprised and amazed. The relation between culture and language in a particular emotion, such as this one, by Goddard, 1997, as I didn't reality. Yeah. In Malay or in Indonesia, we have the word heran, terkejut, terperanjat. And in Indonesian, we have heran, terkejut, and terperanjat, the same. We might use, but these all cannot be used to represent the surprise and amazed. Surprise is a feeling one has in a response to something immediate and unexpected, while amazed is stronger kind of surprise. If we try to translate these two words into Malay or Indonesian, probably some people just go directly with the word heran, terkejut, or terperanjat. If we look up in the bilingual dictionary, we might find these words or one of these words as the translations of surprise and amaze. But then these three words from Malay and Indonesia, words actually cannot capture the real meaning of the words surprised and amazed. Yeah, that is the relations between culture. What we have and we can represent in our language sometimes cannot be directly translated to other culture. Now, there is an activity. Find some examples that show the relations between your native language and your culture. And the second one, find some examples of words or objects that are taboo in your society. Good. All right. Next, we move to the culture and foreign language teaching. In Unit 1, in the previous discussion, we have already learned the relations between language and culture. Now, you know that it is important to know the culture of the target language when you are teaching, or even when you are studying a foreign language. Can you give the reasons or why it is important to know the relations between language and culture when studying a foreign language? Do you have any idea? We'll find it, we'll try to understand it in these sessions. According to Dyer, as cited in Rianti, language teachers have been at the business of incorporating culture information into their foreign language classes long before it became popular to do so. While these teachers may not have used the term culture, they are certainly aware of the fact that one does not communicate in a foreign language by grammar and vocabulary alone. Yet now that experts are suggesting that teachers add culture to their language classroom, the situations become problematic because it is not really clear what this means in the practice. We'll try to find the problem. The problem with incorporating culture into language, foreign language teaching. The problem here is that there are many disagreements about the meaning of language and the meaning of culture. What does he mean? What does Dyer mean by this term? Yes, that is true. It is difficult to find an exact definitions of language and culture. Now, if you have to define the language and culture, probably everyone might have different definitions of these two words. As we have already discussed in the previous discussion, there are some definitions of the word culture. Which definitions you use will affect your, let's say, your perspective, your materials in teaching the target language. The same thing goes to the definitions of language. Yeah, what is language? If you define language as a code, grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciations, then of course your main concern in teaching it is those three language components, and do not really concerned with the culture. But if you define it as a system for the expressions of thoughts, feeling, behavior, etc., by the use of spoken sounds like conventional symbols, like language, yeah, then the culture is really important in teaching and learning process. You see, it is important to have a clear definitions of these two words before you teach. Language, according to Collins Dictionary, as a system for the expressions of feeling by the use of spoken sounds or conventions symbols. Well, Bryan 1997, cited in Ryan, talks about the relations between cultural studies and language teaching is important, not only as a part of their own learning process, but with respect to their methods of teaching language and culture to others. Bryan mentions the reasons to consider cultural study in the foreign language teaching and learning. Here is one of them. What can you conclude from this example? Right. There is a close relations between cultural study and foreign language teaching or learning. Byram mentions the importance of teaching culture for language teachers that can help them in teaching English to their students. Of course, this is related to the method that can be used in the class. In addition, culture can also be a consideration for choosing teaching materials to be used in the classroom. Of course, there are many perspectives that arise regarding these considerations. And on the other hand, language learners may find it easier to understand the material if they use the context around them. There are also those who may argue that if you learn a foreign language, then using a foreign culture as learning material will certainly make the learning process more natural. Of course, there is a debate among language teachers and experts. Byram 1997 talk about this is to enable learners to communicate using a foreign language in different ways and with a non-native speakers. Talking about or using the cultural background, the foreign cultural background here is to enable learners to communicate using a foreign language in different ways and with native and non-native speakers. As indicated before, you must have a clear pictures of the meaning of language and the meaning of culture when you teach and learn a foreign language. Then based on your definitions of these two words, you decide your objectives. As a teacher, your objectives here really influence and determine how you use the materials in the class. Right? Let us say that your main objectives of the teaching of foreign language is to enable learners to communicate using a foreign language. Let's say in different ways and with non-native speakers. the situations is the teachers, in order to achieve this, so that's why students are able to communicate with the native or non-native speakers. If this is your main objectives, then you have to be aware that culture can and will influence people when they involve in a conversations with non-native speakers. Now look at these examples. Ani and Anna, both of them are from Indonesia. Wow, the clothes are really nice. Ah, these are ugly and cheap clothes. While in America, wow, your dress is so beautiful. Mary, thank you. In the conversation between the two Indonesian women, here, Ani and Anna, as we discussed actually in the previous one, by rejecting. And for Susan and Mary, just receive the compliment. Now, these conversations can, let's say, of course, it is very difficult if, for example, Ani is talking to Mary and Nina, Indonesian, talks to Susan, right? Look at this one. If Susan said, wow, your dress is very beautiful. And Nina, as an English, sorry, it should be Indonesian. Ah, this is ugly and very cheap. What can you see from here? Of course, you can see the problem of cross-cultural understanding here. In that conversations, the American woman might feel offended because the dress, yeah, that she thought beautiful is considered to be ugly by the owner. You might feel awkward when you know that your response is hurting other people's feeling. You do not want you or your students in that kind of situations, right? Let us see another examples from, maybe you can formulate your examples. Maybe you can have the conversations that might confuse you. You experience all these things. Now look at this one. Smith went for 7 in double-header yesterday. B must have been a left-handed teacher then. Written down by Dahlia 1996, as I did in reality. Can you guess the topic in these conversations? Yeah, it is very difficult. The topic of this conversation is about baseball. Baseball is very popular in certain countries like in America. Americans love this sport and they talk about this every day, related about this sport, of course. It becomes part of their culture. If you were in a positions that you are not familiar with baseball, what would happen? Of course, it is very difficult to understand this. Yeah, the question in which, so now to understand the above these conversations, of course, we have to know first the game. If we return to our main goal of teaching foreign languages mentioned previously, that we cannot teach a language out of context. The question is, which context should we use? Is it the learner's context or the target language context? Should we ignore the cultural background of the learners when we teach a foreign language? Or should we introduce both cultures? Those questions should be considered before you teach your students. It's easier for the language teachers to choose teaching method if they know the questions. Currently, we are introduced to teaching methods that emphasize the use of students' cultural background in delivering the materials. The materials used when using this method must relate to the context of the learners. Now let us read this example. Liam and Noldi live in a small town, Tomoko, in North Sulawesi. It is 30 kilometers from the beach. They are SLTP students, but they are not in the same school. Leon is studying at SLTP Don Bosco, and Noldi is studying at SLTP Negeri Tomohon. Leon likes cycling, and Noldi does too. Noldi prefers swimming to cycling, but Leon prefers cycling to swimming. One day, Noldi and Leon went to the beach, Karang Ria, Manado. They spent 5 hours to go there. It was Sunday morning. They carried their bags with a camera, binoculars, and some biscuits. When they arrived on the beach, a lot of people had been there. Some were swimming and some were sailing. Grown-up people were lying on the sand. Old people were sitting and enjoying the beach, beautiful beach. Children were playing beach volley, and the owner were playing chess. Naldi was taking pictures, and Leon was too. The sun shone brightly then. The weather was very hot, so that most of the children drank soft drinks such as Coca-Cola, Fanta, Aqua, Pepsi Cola, Grand Sport, and the like. In fact, Naldi and Leon wanted to sail, but they realized that they were too young to sail. They saw the two foreigners enjoyed the sailing. They used their binoculars to see them. They looked very near. Well, if you teach English, for example, Indonesian students, you should use teaching materials that relate to Indonesian context. The text must be about Indonesians, of course. Like this one. There are some terms that are not known in other people in other countries, like SLTP and some places in Sulawesi, and the brand of the drinks. Of course, it is very difficult for foreigners when they are learning English using this text. Well, of course, there are some debates about this. The text, what is that? Experts who support this method believe that the students can learn the target language more quickly if we use our context when we are learning. But if they are if they are familiar with the materials, of course, they will be easy to understand the context. It is true that the students can learn faster when they are learning, when they are familiar with the context in the lesson. But it is difficult to create materials that can be as natural as authentic materials. Here, Doyer explains the authentic materials. A text created by a fluent native speakers of a language for communication with the other fluent speakers of that language, while non-authentic texts are produced by non-fluent speakers of the language or by fluent speakers of the language for purposes other than the communications with the first language users. Well, responding to the previous examples, the text, of course, it is not natural, right? And probably it is made or created by the non-native speakers. While the native speakers will create the authentic materials, and of course, the authentic material is more natural. Yeah, if we look at the non-native materials, like the previous one, the purpose is to fit. It has a specific purpose why the language teacher used the non-native or non-authentic material. From the previous text here, it seems that the teacher wants to teach simple past tense, and he will use a text that has many examples of sentences using simple past tense. Of course, this can be risky. Why? Sometimes if the teacher is not careful, then he will use unnatural text, and the students may not learn language. They just learn the language pattern. As the result, they will have a problems when what is that? When it comes to communicating with native speakers, of course. Yeah. In the examples here, most of the sentences use the past tense, which makes the story, of course, monotonous and uninteresting. Other experts believe that the students should get authentic material when they are learning a foreign language. Of course, probably it can train them. Let the students practice, of course, to speak using the authentic materials created by the native speakers. Dwyer explains that culture has always been transmitted in the language class, though we may not have been aware of it. How can? Is it possible? If it is possible, then how? Okay, let's try to describe the situation in the classroom when teaching reading comprehensions. For example, a teacher asks students to read a passage on Thanksgiving Day. When you and your students discuss the content of the passage, of course, you are introducing American culture at the time. In that case, a special day of to express your gratitude to God and other elements about the Thanksgiving Day. Students will learn, and you also will have to explain it to them, right? Now, focus on this to discuss. Can I see you for a minute, Professor Chen? Sure. What's up? I need more time to write my paper. Can I have 1 week extensions? Sure, but not more than 1 week. You have to put your paper in my mailbox by 4 next week. Okay, thanks. Well, can you try to figure out what happens here? The target language cultural background can be exposed to you and to your students, not only through reading text, but also through authentic dialogues here. If we refer to the Dyer's definitions about the authentic materials previously, the authentic dialogue is the dialogue spoken by the native speakers in a real situations. Of course, by using this authentic dialogue, we will get an examples of actual usage of certain expressions. Another important point, of course, we can get from we can get informations on the cultural background of the speakers, right? Now, what can we say about this dialogue? We can see that in Western culture, the language used between a student and a lecturer is a bit slightly informal language. Look at in English language, the word I and you can refer to anybody. For example, when you talk with your friend, you can use I. You can talk with your family, your parent. You can also use I or even you, right? However, in some countries, in some cultures, such as in Indonesia, of course, this violates the existing norms. There should be distinctions in the language use or the vocabulary. If you are talking to a different people, for example, older people, you may not use you or I here. Several words to express it is introduced by Huta Suba. For expressing the word you can use kamu, anda, saudara, kau, lu, and dikau. And those have different criteria. You for the, let's say, friends, kamu can be for the more official word, anda is for the official and formal words, saudara, it is also for the official, kau, lu, dikau, it is less formal words. And of course, should be differentiated when you are talking with some people. Now, give an examples of teaching English by using your students' cultural background. I have provided examples of this text taken from the Austin 1987, as I did in Rianti. Andy, you may read this all and try to answer this. Write any information on the cultural background of this story. Do you think there is any similarity between the culture in this story and the culture in your place? And write your comment for the excerpt. That is the first excerpt. And then second excerpt here by taken from Mankit and Sudrajat 1995, as I did in Rianti. Again, read this and answer these questions. Is this excerpt considered as authentic material or not? Does the excerpt contain information about the culture? Use this excerpt as your teaching material and decide what topic will be appropriate with this excerpt. And the last, write your comment on this excerpt. We have come to the last of these sessions, today's sessions. We have discussed about the definitions of culture. We have talked about the relations between language and also culture. And we also discussed about how the culture should be implemented, should be used in the teaching, a foreign language teaching. That's all for today's meeting. We'll be meeting in another sessions. Thank you so much and bye-bye.